This is Counterpoint, and I'm your host, Tanya Allen. A lot is happening in matters concerning parents and children right now. Today, we'll tackle the latest at a school board meetings with parents taking on trustees and what is perceived as ideological indoctrination in schools. We'll discuss the federal election and which parental rights issues are percolating there, including Mark Carney's commitment to puberty blockers for kids. We'll unpack a Canadian pediatrics group calling on doctors to affirm gender dysphoria for children as young as 6. And we'll cover Manitoba's funding of radical gender programs for youth. Plus, Manitoba is proposing new legislation to make it a crime to not use someone's preferred pronouns. Joining me now to unpack it all is Celine Traynor, Director of Communications for Parents as First Educators. Good morning, Celine. Great to have you on. I hope you're well.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Tanya.
Great. So many, as they think towards the election happening in a couple weeks, a few short days, that parental rights, we haven't heard very much. We just seem to hear tariffs. But there are parents who are concerned about certain issues that have come through the last few governments and would like to have their voices heard. So which issues are percolating for parental rights in this federal election for you?
For sure. We certainly have not heard a lot about parental rights this election. It's all been tariffs and trade, but parents are certainly concerned about gender ideology and the school system, and of course, Bill C-4. So in this election, we have Mark Carney, the Liberals, and Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. And Bill C-4 is really taking up most of the conversation when it comes to parental rights. It was originally introduced as Bill C-6. However, it passed as Bill C-4. The name was changed. Not very much was changed in the bill. And the Conservatives, unfortunately, also allowed the bill to pass.
Okay, so what are the main issues with C-6?
So Bill C-6 essentially bans something called conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is something that used to include some medical malpractices, such as electrotherapy and things like that. It is no longer that is no longer what conversion therapy is considered to be. Conversion therapy is really talk therapy. It's just any kind of situation in which a person, whether they be a child, youth, or an adult, speaks with a psychotherapist, and it can include discussions about gender and sexual orientation.
So, for example, say I had some addiction and I wanted to change that behavior. Would that be kind of considered change therapy or conversion therapy?
I suppose I know that conversion therapy generally is when people refer to conversion therapy, they're generally referring to issues like homosexuality and transgenderism.
Okay,
However,
gotcha.
we do not have any compelled conversion therapy, right? So the bill essentially is very vague, and it can allow parents to be jailed for taking their children to see a mental health professional to discuss issues about gender confusion. So if a child
Wow.
has gender dysphoria and they're confused about their sex, or if a child is having some homosexual tendencies and maybe they're unhappy with that, they can potentially, the government can potentially come after the parents just for taking their children to speak with a therapist, and oftentimes even a religious leader, because oftentimes they offer forms of counseling, right? And we know that Canada's a very diverse country with a lot of different religious groups, and they have morals and values, and oftentimes certain things don't align with everyone's conscience. So
Right. Okay. That's interesting. So I think a lot of Canadians probably aren't aware. So this became law, right? C6 became C4, and then in late 2021, it became law. But I think a lot of parents, as you've just pointed out, are unaware that parents can be jailed with this legislation. This is now law. So just reiterate this. How are parents going to be jailed? Like, how is this
well,
possible? Like, how does this bill make that possible?
the bill makes it illegal for parents to take their children to a conversion therapy situation,
So
essentially.
like a counselor.
Yes, exactly. So there's been situations in which doctors and teachers can also get involved, and that's a form of overstep, in my view, of parental rights. So if someone finds out that a child is seeing a counselor with regard to gender dysphoria, if authorities get involved, parents can become in legal trouble, which can eventually lead to jail time potentially.
Wow. I have 5 kids. As a parent, we have ongoing dialogue with our children about all sorts of things. I would hate to think that there are certain topics that are off limits, or that if I have counseling or if I want to engage a counselor, that could render me in prison. Kind of shocking.
For
We're going to
sure.
pick this up in just a few minutes.